Hello, my name is Lucas. I'm here to talk about a bit of lit. I didn't say that part. Um, Talking about Stoner by John Williams, which I first heard about on NPR, National Public Radio. Um, some guy was giving an interview about what it meant to him for some reason. I don't remember why. And he was talking about the scene where Stoner um, is asked what Sonnet 73 by William Shakespeare means by his professor, and he just has no idea. You know, he's a farm boy who was quite content with his life and had no serious aspirations for anything. Um, and went to school because his father told him to for agriculture, but he happened to take this class and it changed everything for him, and he grew to love literature and particularly focused on medieval literature. Um, and two of my favorite booktubers have talked about it recently: Noah from Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse and Mr. Nothing from Around the Weird. They've talked about it in great detail, and I thought, why not? Mr. Nothing personally recommended the book to me, and I gave it a go. And I've got to say, it's okay. I'm not caught up in the hype. I don't admire this book. I think for me, what doesn't work is that I don't like existential books that focus on the whole of one's life and, you know, by the end ask you, did anything did my life and my work and anything I did have value? Because the answer is just yes, it did. I guess unless you're a supervillain of some kind. So for me, like, I guess I was just, like, I don't mind existential books. I like existential writers and absurdist writers. I love Albert Camus. I haven't read all of his work, but the works that I have read, I think are fantastic, and they're very existential. Myth of Sisyphus and The Plague, and of course The Stranger, which I haven't read in a long time. I don't know if I would still like it. I love The Plague, though. But it follows this guy's life all through his trials and tribulations, and he's a very mundane, plain kind of guy who has all these, you know, issues that other people would have. And, you know, it seems to me that for, like, at least the first half of the book, you know, I guess he makes two major choices very early on: to change his course of study and tell his parents, and his parents become estranged from him because they're kind of disappointed, to say the least. But, you know, because he's so passive or impassive, as the narrator often says, it's kind of like, I know he put a lot of thought and thinking into that question, and that really moved him, but it just sort of felt like this is where he's gonna go. Like, he took this class and now he's gonna do this because he doesn't really like to rock the boat too much. And he marries a young woman, Edith, that he should have realized had no interest in him. Immediately was quite uncomfortable, and we get a lot about her and why she's that way. It's kind of, she is pretty well rounded, I would say, and we get a lot of her and the struggles she's facing, and you could even say she has some existential crises of feeling like she's trapped, much like you know, Dave Masters says to his friends, Gordon and William, William Stoner and Finch, Gordon Finch, these three graduate guys at the University of Missouri, that they're sort of trapped in academia. Um, she feels a little bit misogynist because she goes from being this pure angel of sorts, because she's been made to be that way, um, which is fine. I'm for it. And then all of a sudden she decides she wants a child, and she becomes, um, she becomes hyper aggressive in her desire to have a child. Let's put it that way. And then she becomes, once she's pregnant, she's or at least when she's had the child, she is pure prude. And there are complexities with her. I'm not going to say she's a flat character and she just, but even like she also is constantly just a burden and getting in William's way, and it feels a lot like a lot of things are getting in his way. Um, anyway, that is just my little contention there, why I don't really like Edith, even though there are some interesting things going on there. Um, yeah, so he gets married, has a kid, and then he comes across this lazy student who wants to be in his survey class, who tries to get away with the bare minimum and wants to pass and go on, possibly to teach. And what had been frustrating for me for a long time is that I felt like he was so passive, and then all of a sudden, he's extremely passionate about making sure that this person, this kind of person, does not sort of tarnish the work that he does by bringing this low effort in, which I think is fair enough. Thank you, William Stoner, for actually doing something and making a choice and making a stand. But it just makes me think he's a terrible teacher, because there are plenty of ways, even to be rude and sort of harsh, or maybe not even rude, just harsh, to say no. Or just simply no, you didn't put in the work. But he has to go all out to defend, because all that is ever on his mind is his work and academia, and he ignores the work of his relationships. His daughter, his wife has tried to wage war with, as is often said, and estrange that relationship. So he's got difficulties there, and unfortunately for Grace, she ends up being the most tragic character in the whole story, Grace being his daughter. Anyway, this conflict with this student ends up being a big issue in the office politics, because the new head of the department, that was his protege, and he is taking it out on William Stoner, who eventually comes to an affair with Catherine Driscoll, a student of his, who also does work. She was sort of just taking the class to check it out. And her work is great, and he's extremely passionate about her. They fall in love. She's passionate about him. They're both very much into the same thing and into each other. And it makes his relationship with his wife and daughter better. Never really mentions his daughter. I can understand just sort of leaving his wife be because of all the ups and downs that she has and that she goes through, struggling to live with the conditions that are there for her. But I just felt like he sort of feels like an absentee father, sort of, even though he's there, and he did take care of the daughter for the first year for sure, and more, because once she had the baby, she decided, I don't want to deal with this. Oh, Edith. Anyway, Lomax, the head, wants to take advantage of this to use this relationship against William Stoner to force him to make a decision. And they both decide that their work is the most important thing to them. And still to this point, I was feeling like, man, this guy has no interiority. Like, there's nothing inside of him. He was starting to show more. But still to this point, I was feeling like he has nothing inside of him except, like, pure work ethic. And he does have this lust for her, but he really likes her academic work. This is the initial attraction. So, you know, in my mind, he was attracted to her mind and her work, and that's how I feel about that. Anyway, so she gets going, and we sort of fast track. He gets older. He's getting older, and his daughter, his wife is trying to make her very popular and pretty and very girly and stuff, and this causes all kinds of psychological issues. Pushes her away from William. And then, you know, he has been saving money for her to go to a nice college out east. Edith will not hear of it. And so she goes to University of Missouri, and she's, again, trapped. This story is very much about being trapped and imprisoned by your choices and by the opportunities you have and the you know, what choices you can make, and what's available to you, what options do you have. I think I just said that, but she decides to get Grace decides, I'm gonna get pregnant. And that will hopefully lead me to marriage, which will get me out of this prison that I feel like I'm living in, which is just the man she marries goes off to fight in World War II and dies fighting off Japan in the Pacific Theater. And she turns to drink, and she becomes an alcoholic. And William sort of feels like his daughter died a long time ago. And then it gets time for him to retire. So, of course, Lomax is trying to push him out. But he's not going to have it. He's not going to give up to Lomax. And, you know, he eventually decides to retire because he's dying of cancer, and he's got this reflective moment at the end. He gets a book and starts thinking about Catherine Driscoll and feels alive, very, very much alive. And this is where we start to see some of his interior, what's really going on inside his head. And he starts thinking about whether or not everything he did was worthwhile, or was he a failure, and this and that. And this kind of question I don't find very interesting when you're following a whole life. I mean, we didn't follow him to, you know, the age he was at the beginning, from birth, but still, I don't find it interesting. It's not an interesting question. Very much makes me think of Everyman by Philip Roth, but this book is infinitely better. That book is actually trash. Of course, Edith makes me think of Kathy Ames from East of Eden. A little more developed and easy to understand. Kathy Ames is sort of an enigma, and you can't really understand her motives. But all the same, he starts asking these things, and he has his last meeting with Gordon Finch, and he sort of gets shocked because William Stoner is talking about, because he's taking these pain pills, he's talking about Dave Masters, and feels like, oh no, I was trapped. Like Dave Masters said. And, he's sort of seeing death is about to happen for William, and it's coming for me, and it's coming for us all. And then William kind of dies. I feel like I might have gotten something out of order there. But anyway, it is sort of interesting to see this story about such a mundane figure grappling with these big questions, this sort of small, insignificant man of no note, just another guy, really, really just another guy who makes mistakes and that gets frustrated, and he's raised to be very stoic because he's a farmer, and this causes a lot of issues, and this is why I guess it sort of feels like he doesn't have a lot of interiority. It does show, of course, near the end, I think, the most. Even before, he starts getting really, really existential. But at that point, I think it really shows, like, all these things that have been going through his mind the whole time. And, I guess they are there throughout the whole thing, but mostly it feels like he's just stuck on academia and, like, ugh, no thank you. Yeah, I do like that it does grapple with these questions with such a sort of small man, because I think that's very relatable. At the same time, I just don't like it when it's about a whole life. Just doesn't do it for me, because of course your life had meaning, as long as you were not a complete waste of space and cruel or something. I don't know. Anyway, those are my thoughts. It's okay. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're really into books about mundane people and existentialism. Bye.